There is a quiet fear that visits almost every human heart unexpectedly. It appears in the smallest moments, when someone you love leaves the house, when the phone rings, or while you're watching them smile across the table. Then, without warning, the mind whispers a question you never wanted to hear. What if one day they're no longer here? Before anything has changed, peace quietly disappears. Welcome to Mindfulness, where we explore authentic Buddhist teachings with calm reflection, timeless wisdom, and practical guidance for everyday life. The Buddha did not teach people to stop loving. Instead, he invited people to examine why love so often becomes mixed with anxiety, why joy becomes guarded by fear, and why the mind struggles to rest even while everything seems perfectly fine. Tonight, we will walk through one of the deepest teachings in Buddhism, not to escape love, but to understand how love can become freer, steadier, and less haunted by the fear of loss. The path may feel unfamiliar at first, but if you stay until the end, you may discover that the very fear you have spent years trying to silence can become the doorway to a quieter and more compassionate way of living. 1. The fear that hides inside love. Imagine waking before sunrise. The house is completely still. Somewhere in another room, someone you love is sleeping peacefully. Nothing is wrong. No illness, no argument, no tragedy has entered your life. Yet the heart does something strange. It whispers a question that has never been invited. What if this doesn't last? Most people immediately push that question away. They call it negative thinking. They distract themselves with work, music, conversation, or the endless movement of another busy day. Yet the question keeps returning, not because the mind enjoys suffering, but because it senses something true that it has never learned how to face. The Buddha taught that all conditioned things are subject to change. This principle, known as Anicca, is one of the foundations of Buddhist understanding. Mountains weather, rivers change their course, bodies grow older, seasons pass, and every meeting eventually becomes a parting. This is not presented as a punishment or a reason for despair. It is simply the nature of conditioned existence. Yet notice what the mind often does. It hears this teaching and immediately resists it. Not yet. Maybe everyone else, but not my family. Surely there must be a way to keep this happiness safe. The resistance itself becomes exhausting. Look carefully at your own experience. Have you ever found yourself worrying about someone while they were perfectly healthy? Have you replayed imaginary futures that never happened? Have you checked your phone again simply because someone had not answered for an hour? Nothing had changed outside you. Everything had changed inside you. The Buddha repeatedly encouraged his disciples to look directly at the movements of the mind rather than assuming that every thought deserved belief. Fear often arrives dressed as protection. It tells you that constant worrying is proof of deep love. But if worry truly protected those we love, then the most anxious people would experience the least loss. Life quietly shows otherwise. Fear cannot stop impermanence. It can only prevent us from fully inhabiting the moments that are still here. That realization is uncomfortable, but it opens the first door. Perhaps the question is not how to eliminate loss. Perhaps the deeper question is why the mind suffers long before loss has even arrived. 2. What are you really afraid of? When people say they fear losing someone, they usually believe the fear belongs entirely to the future. But the Buddha often encouraged people to examine experience much more closely. The future has not yet arrived. The loss has not happened. So where is the suffering appearing? It is happening now. This observation does not deny that grief is painful. Buddhism never dismisses the sorrow that follows separation. Throughout the early discourses, separation from what is loved is acknowledged as one of the unavoidable forms of human suffering. But there is another layer that quietly develops long before any actual separation occurs. The mind begins rehearsing tomorrow while standing inside today. Notice how quickly imagination becomes reality inside the body. One passing thought. What if something happened? And suddenly the shoulders tighten, the breathing becomes shallow, the heart races. Nothing outside has changed, yet the body behaves as though the imagined event were already present. The Buddha frequently pointed to this tendency of the mind to become entangled with thoughts instead of observing them as passing mental events. Meditation, in its deepest sense, is not an escape from life. It is training to recognize when the mind has wandered into worlds that do not yet exist. Imagine sitting beside someone you love during an ordinary afternoon. They are smiling, they are speaking, they are completely present, but you are no longer with them. You are attending an imaginary funeral that has never happened. How much of that afternoon did fear quietly steal? This is why mindfulness is not merely attention. It is the return to reality. Reality says, this conversation is happening, this breath is happening, this shared silence is happening, everything else is projection. That does not mean projection is evil, it is simply incomplete. It mistakes possibility for certainty. The Buddha did not promise that practicing mindfulness would remove all painful emotions. Rather, it helps us recognize the difference between direct experience and the stories built around it. When this distinction becomes clearer, something remarkable happens. The people you love begin to appear more vividly, not because they have changed, because your attention has finally returned to where they actually are. And that changes the quality of love itself, not by making it weaker, by making it fully present. 3. Why clinging cannot protect love. One of the most misunderstood ideas in Buddhism concerns attachment. Many people hear that Buddhism speaks about attachment and imagine that the teaching encourages emotional distance. They picture someone who no longer cares deeply, believing that caring itself creates suffering. But that is not what the Buddha taught. The early discourses distinguish between genuine compassion and clinging. Compassion wishes for the well-being of another. Clinging quietly demands that reality remain exactly as we prefer. The difference may seem small, yet it changes everything. Imagine holding water in your open hands. The water remains for a while. You can appreciate its coolness. You can see sunlight reflected upon it. Now imagine squeezing your hands tightly because you are afraid of losing it. The harder you grip, the faster it escapes. This image is not a Buddhist parable from scripture. It is simply a way of illustrating a principle found throughout Buddhist teaching. The mind often believes control will create security, yet the search for complete control becomes its own suffering. Parents experience this when children begin making their own choices. Partners experience it when another person changes in ways they never expected. Friends experience it when lives slowly move in different directions. Nothing has necessarily gone wrong. Life has continued unfolding. Clinging interprets every change as danger. Wisdom recognizes change as part of the nature of existence. The Buddha repeatedly encouraged his followers to cultivate loving kindness, known as mettā, toward all beings. Notice that loving kindness does not ask, "How can I keep everyone forever?" Instead, it asks, "How can I meet this person with goodwill while this meeting still exists?" This changes love from possession into presence. The one who clings keeps measuring how much time remains. The one who practices loving kindness keeps discovering how complete this moment already is. Neither escapes impermanence, but one spends far less of life arguing with it. And perhaps that is where real peace quietly begins. Foreseeing change before it arrives. There is an interesting practice found within the early Buddhist tradition that can seem unsettling at first. Practitioners are encouraged to contemplate change deliberately, not to become fearful, but to become truthful. This is very different from imagining disasters. It is the quiet recognition that every meeting has the nature of parting. Every beginning contains an ending. Every birth carries aging within it. The Buddha did not present these reflections to make life darker. He presented them because reality does not become less true when ignored. Think about how we treat flowers. A flower blooms beautifully because it will not bloom forever. If someone could guarantee that the blossom would remain unchanged for 1,000 years, would we treasure today's blossom quite the same way? Impermanence is not only the reason things disappear, it is also the reason they matter. This insight slowly transforms how we look at the people around us. Instead of assuming there will always be another conversation, another birthday, another quiet walk together, the heart begins to recognize each ordinary meeting as something deeply precious. Not because it is rare, because it is unrepeatable. No conversation can ever happen twice. No shared afternoon returns in exactly the same form. Mindfulness allows us to notice this without becoming overwhelmed by sadness. Instead, gratitude quietly grows where certainty once demanded permanence. The Buddha often emphasized careful attention to present experience because the present is the only place where kindness can actually be practiced. You cannot embrace someone yesterday. You cannot listen tomorrow. You cannot offer patience inside an imagined future. Only here, only now. When this becomes more than an idea, fear begins losing one of its strongest allies. The habit of postponing love. The heart finally realizes something astonishing. The opposite of fear is not certainty. It is wholehearted presence. And once presence becomes your way of meeting those you love, something else begins changing deep within the mind, something the Buddha considered even more important than peace itself. 5. Learning to love without borrowing tomorrow's sorrow. One of the quietest changes that happens through Buddhist practice is almost impossible to notice at first. Nothing dramatic happens. The people around you remain the same. The responsibilities of life continue. The uncertainty of tomorrow does not disappear. Yet little by little, the heart begins carrying life differently. The Buddha often encouraged his disciples to observe not only the world around them, but also the habits of their own minds. Over time, they discovered something surprisingly simple. Much of their suffering did not come directly from the people they loved. nor from the changing world itself, but from the constant attempt to secure what could never be permanently secured. Think about how often the mind quietly negotiates with reality. It says, if everyone I care about stays healthy, then I will finally relax. Or, if nothing changes, then I can be happy. These conditions sound reasonable because they are built from love. Yet they ask life to promise something that life has never promised anyone. The Buddha did not respond to this with pessimism. Instead, he invited people to place their confidence somewhere else. Rather than depending on circumstances that will always shift, he encouraged the cultivation of qualities that remain available regardless of circumstances: generosity, patience, compassion, mindfulness, and wisdom. These are treasures that do not depend upon youth, health, success, or even the continued presence of those we love. This does not remove grief when separation eventually comes. Buddhist teachings never suggest that an awakened heart becomes incapable of sadness. The early discourses show that compassion and tenderness remain fully alive. What changes is not the capacity to love, but the expectation that love must guarantee permanence. Imagine walking beside someone through a beautiful garden. If your attention is fixed entirely on how quickly the flowers will fade, you miss their fragrance while they are still blooming. If you convince yourself they will never fade, disappointment is inevitable. But if you quietly understand their nature, every blossom becomes more vivid. You stop demanding forever from something that was only ever offering today. This understanding is not resignation. It is gratitude freed from illusion. The fear of losing loved ones begins to soften, not because loss has become acceptable, but because the mind is slowly learning that love reaches its fullest expression when it is no longer trying to imprison time itself. 6. What the Buddha meant by true refuge. When fear becomes overwhelming, the mind immediately begins searching for somewhere to hide. Sometimes it hides inside distraction. Sometimes it hides inside endless planning. Sometimes it seeks reassurance from the people it loves, asking questions that cannot truly be answered. Promise you'll always be here. Tell me everything will be all right. Yet no human being can honestly make such promises. The Buddha spoke often about taking refuge, but refuge in Buddhism does not mean hiding from reality. It means finding stability within reality as it actually is. Traditionally, Buddhists speak of taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. This is not simply a religious formula. It reflects three forms of support that remain available when the ordinary securities of life begin to crumble. The Buddha represents the possibility that freedom from unnecessary suffering is attainable. His life is not offered as a guarantee that painful experiences will disappear, but as evidence that the human mind can relate to those experiences with profound clarity and compassion. The Dhamma, the teaching itself, provides guidance whenever confusion begins to dominate the heart. It continually redirects attention away from speculation about what might happen and back toward direct observation of what is actually happening. Again and again, Buddhist practice returns to this simple movement, seeing clearly rather than imagining endlessly. The Sangha, the community of practitioners, reminds us that fear is not a private failure. Every person who sincerely walks this path encounters attachment, uncertainty, grief, and longing. Knowing this does not remove your pain, but it gently dissolves the feeling that you must carry it alone. Perhaps this is why the Buddha never encouraged isolation as the answer to suffering. While periods of solitude have an important place within practice, wisdom matures alongside compassion and honest relationships. We support one another not because we can stop impermanence, but because we can help each other meet it with greater steadiness. Eventually, the meaning of refuge changes. It no longer means asking the world to become safe before you allow yourself to live. Instead, it becomes the confidence that whatever life brings, the qualities of mindfulness, compassion, ethical conduct, and wisdom can continue to guide your next step. Fear may still knock at the door, but it no longer becomes the owner of the house. 7. The love that does not depend on keeping. There is a question that quietly changes as Buddhist practice deepens. At first, it sounds like this: how do I stop being afraid of losing the people I love? Gradually, it becomes something different. What does it truly mean to love another person? This is the beginning of wisdom. Much of what we call love is sincere and beautiful. Yet if we look carefully, we often discover another element mixed into it. We do not simply wish for another person's happiness. We also wish for our own world to remain unchanged. Their presence becomes part of our sense of security. None of this is wrong. It is part of being human. The difficulty begins when the mind quietly assumes that because something is precious, it should also remain permanent. The Buddha pointed in another direction. In the early discourses, loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity are cultivated together as the Brahmavihāras, the divine abodes. Loving kindness wishes for another's well-being without demanding anything in return. Compassion responds to suffering with care. Sympathetic joy delights in another's happiness. Equanimity remembers that every being lives according to causes and conditions that no one can completely control. Equanimity is often misunderstood. It does not mean becoming distant or caring less. Rather, it protects compassion from being overwhelmed by the impossible task of controlling life itself. Imagine sitting beside an aging parent. Their steps are slower than they once were. Their stories repeat. Their hands have lost some of their strength. One response is to become consumed by fear, trying to resist every sign of change. Another is to avoid thinking about it altogether. Neither response allows you to truly be with them. There is another way. You acknowledge the changes without turning away from them. Because you are no longer struggling against reality, your attention returns to what matters most. You listen more carefully. You speak more gently. A simple conversation or a shared cup of tea becomes something quietly precious because you know this exact moment will never come again. This is how Buddhist practice transforms love. It is not preparing you to feel less grief in the future. It is helping you stop postponing love until fear finally disappears. The Buddha repeatedly encouraged careful attention to the present because this is where kindness can be practiced. You can forgive today. You can express gratitude today. You can choose patience today. Understanding impermanence does not diminish these moments. It reveals their true value. The heart that no longer demands permanence discovers something unexpected. It becomes capable of loving more deeply because it has stopped asking love to accomplish what no human being can: prevent change. 8. The peace that grows alongside impermanence. Perhaps you have noticed something throughout these teachings. The Buddha never promised a world without aging, separation, or loss. Instead, he asked a quieter question. If change cannot be removed from life, is it possible to meet it without being ruled by fear? That question remains as relevant today as it was more than 2,000 years ago. Every morning, people hope those they love will be safe. Parents watch children leave the house. Partners say goodbye before work. Friends assume there will be another conversation. Most of the time, life unfolds as expected. Sometimes it does not. Buddhism never asks us to deny this reality, but it does ask us to notice something else. Long before any real separation occurs, the mind often creates countless imagined ones. It rehearses losses that never happen and grieves futures that never arrive. While attention is trapped in those imagined endings, the life that is actually unfolding quietly slips past. Mindfulness gently interrupts this habit. It brings us back to what is here. This breath, this conversation, this ordinary day, this opportunity to act with kindness. As we return to direct experience again and again, our relationship with fear begins to change. Gratitude gradually replaces urgency. Presence takes the place of constant anticipation. Love becomes less possessive because it no longer depends on securing tomorrow before appreciating today. The Buddha described this transformation as a gradual cultivation. Wisdom develops through repeated practice, not through a single insight. Each time you recognize fear without immediately following it, the mind becomes a little steadier. Each time you return from imagined futures to present reality, another small habit of freedom is strengthened. None of this means you will never grieve. When someone deeply loved dies, sorrow is a natural expression of love. Buddhism does not ask us to suppress those tears. What wisdom softens is the additional suffering created by resisting what cannot be changed. There is quiet courage in accepting that every relationship is a meeting between two impermanent lives. Far from making love weaker, this understanding gives it greater depth. Every shared meal, every ordinary conversation, every simple goodbye becomes worthy of careful attention. As these teachings settle into your own life, you may find that the fear of losing loved ones does not disappear overnight. Instead, it slowly loses its authority. It becomes another passing state of mind rather than the force directing your life. You stop measuring love by how tightly you hold on. You begin measuring it by how fully you are present. That is not an escape from impermanence. It is learning to love so completely that impermanence no longer prevents you from opening your heart. If these teachings spoke to something within your own experience, don't let them remain only ideas. Return to them in ordinary moments, during a shared meal, a quiet walk, or a simple conversation with someone you love. Buddhist practice grows through repeated reflection, not through a single insight. May these teachings help you meet each day with greater clarity, deeper compassion, and the quiet courage to love fully without being ruled by fear.